What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am the one-armed madman. And with me today to discuss transhumanism is Ora Nadrich. Nora, thank you for Ora, excuse me. I just did my best to not mess up your last name, and I screwed up your first name.
No worries. Hi there. Hi, Nick.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for coming on.
Pretty
So,
good. Yeah.
I had, when I was a kid, I was into the Discovery Channel. Back when I was a kid, Discovery Channel and History Channel still put out pretty decent stuff. It wasn't all just, 4 clicks television, essentially. And I used to watch a lot of documentaries on aliens and transhumanism and that type of thing. And I kind of grew out of it as I got older, as I started working and getting busy and doing drugs and that kind of stuff. But when I lost my hand, I immediately had to start looking into prosthetics. You're going to lose your hand, so you're going to want a hook. And right away I go, a hook? What are you talking about, a hook? Like, you've seen Iron Man. Like, we've got, all kinds of good stuff. And they're like, no, we do not, in fact. We do not have anything good. And they even brought in amputees that it was when I didn't believe them at first, but they brought in an amputee to talk to me, to just kind of like break you in. This is how it's going to be. And he showed up without a prosthetic on. I go, oh, you don't have a prosthetic? And he goes, oh, yeah, I've got a hook and a hand, but, I just didn't feel like wearing it. And at that point, I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. This stuff's not as advanced as I thought it was going to be. So, how did you get into transhumanism? How does someone like you get into something like that?
Well, I did research on my new book, Time to Awaken, Changing the World with Conscious Awareness. And when I researched transhumanism was one of the things that one of the rabbit holes that I went down, because I was looking at artificial intelligence, AI, and transhumanism, which is really part of this whole technology advancement that we're experiencing really quickly. And I was pretty fascinated by the fact that here we are, we're right at the cusp of moving into the future at a rapid speed. So things like transhumanism and artificial intelligence is real, and it exists in real time. And we have advanced so much in our technologies that, speaking of transhumanism, that is an area of not just what you're talking about, the area of prosthetics and how we can change the actual physical body, if you will, but that, looking at sort of a future forward vision of what are we going to look like as human beings. And so if you really start to explore transhumanists, and I explored Ray Kurzweil, who's a Google engineer who wrote The Singularity is Near, I was really kind of, I don't want to say fascinated, really. I was somewhat really intrigued, but also kind of like, whoa, things are moving so fast that if we really go by the transhumanist or the futurist vision of what that's going to look like, we're all going to be supercomputers. And one of the thing about transhumanism that's really a very strong part of what I think a lot of transhumanists believe is that we can transcend our biology. And that means we're going to transcend our physical form. And we could basically be hooked up like to the cloud and live forever, which is, in a way, I could put my Blade Runner hat on and go, let's look at, or 2001 Space Odyssey and get Kubrick about it and get Blade Runner about it and go, well, we are in the future. We're in the 21st century, but where is this going to go? So when you bring up your hand, I know that there's positives about future technology. And then there's also some real serious stuff to contemplate about the fact that we are in the future.
Yeah, it's some really creepy stuff because, like you said, yeah, it can do some great things. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we're able to teach paraplegics how to walk again in the next 10 to 20 years. Once you get a brain interface and some sort of body cage on, you can actually train neurons to regrow and fire in different ways. And the brain is so plastic that it can, when I got hurt, they told me, you might feel a little bit different for a while because your brain is actually creating new pathways and new signals because it knows that things are burnt out and they're just not going to work again. So they're going to have to reroute, and you might
Right.
even think a little bit different. And I think that's absolutely the case. Um,
Yeah, and like, you know what? The fascinating thing about that, Nick, is that we use only what a certain percentage of our brain anyway. So I can look at this stuff and go, I get it. We're going to be advancing so quickly. And what we've seen sped up in the last just, I don't know, a couple of years has been mind blowing. Because you look at something like AI, well, AI is going to be used in so many ways. Part of the strike of in the film industry is AI could take the place of writers, and they can just, AI or chat GP, what is it,
yeah,
chat
yeah, Chat
G,
GPT.
GPT, could be writing this stuff, and then you don't really need people,
Yeah,
even though you need to enter it in. But yeah, it's very sci-fi in a lot of ways. And I do agree with you about the neurons and firing up the neurons and the neuroplasticity of the brain, and that, we can really utilize parts of the brain that we maybe don't. So in one regard, it's really interesting and fascinating, but I also, it's like, it's like anything else that man
yeah,
creates. You say, well, the same could be about the atomic bomb. It could be about anything that's really powerful. How are we going to use it?
yeah. And I like to think of it in terms of like proactive and reactive. So like I am a reactive if you would say that I'm a transhuman, which I'm not, because I would say that you would have to do something better than a baseline human to be considered in that way. But still, it's reactive. It's when we get into the proactive stuff that really starts to worry me. People saying, oh, I'm going to chop my hand off for no reason other than that I like robots and, I want to be able to put on a different color every day or something like that. Luckily, we are quite a ways away from that. We still have to deal with attaching it to the limb somehow. And
Start with that. Why don't we start with like something like with you specifically, like prosthetics? Like, let's advance prosthetics. Like before we
yeah,
create the, I mean, listen, robots are being created that talk and think almost like humans. So we're seeing this more and more, and you're seeing it on social media, and people are like, "Whoa!" I think there is this robot named Sophia.
yeah,
Maybe you've
creepy.
seen, really, really creepy. And so as far as advancing technologies and even in the medical milieu, like, you'd think we would have prosthetics that are way more advanced than they are, or there are things
Well,
that are really useful. Do you know?
yeah, unfortunately, prosthetics are built for nobody. They are designed and they exist for grants and research. That's it. When they brought me in and they said, "Okay, we're gonna have to chop you here. We're gonna send you to this doctor. He's gonna get you all set up." I go to the doctor and the guy goes, "Oh yeah, we're not even gonna ask for a hand." I'm like, "What are you talking about? We're not even gonna ask." And he goes, "Well, you don't have kids. You two aren't even married yet. Me and my ex-wife were in there together. Maybe when you guys have kids, then you could come back. Then we can ask them, and then hopefully we'll get the answer you're looking for." And I was just blown away. And luckily, I'm a pain in the ass, and I learned that I was able to get a second opinion if I was having surgery. So I went out to the Mayo Clinic, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they sent you to that guy. That guy's a shill. He's who Medicare and insurance want you to go to because he's not going to ask for anything." They go, "We're going to give you the best of everything, and they're not going to be able to turn us down because we're the Mayo Clinic." And I went,
Wow.
"Wow, that's interesting." And then I asked him, they go, "They build them for nobody." He goes,
Mhm.
"Nobody wants to spend the money on them, but everybody wants to work on them and learn how to build them." So what I've learned is like DARPA did an experiment in 2012 where they took a paraplegic woman, they put a brain computer interface into her mind. It was not anything nearly advanced as like what Elon Musk is doing with Neuralink. It was something that
Right.
had to be taken out
Right.
afterwards because of infection and things of that nature. But they were able to, move a hand, and she was able to feed herself from the other side of the room and all kinds of cool stuff. And then, of course, the military and DARPA does what they do, and they brought her into a what do they call those things? A flight simulator for a F-22 or something like that. Let's see if we can hook her up to a fighter jet. And the lead scientist on the and doctor on the project resigned. He was like, "We're trying to save people, not create weapons." And it's like, "No, man, we are trying to create weapons."
Yeah, it's like, yeah, one more thing to
Yeah.
weaponize. It's like, it's amazing to me that once you get into you get your hands on these incredible powerful technologies, that it can really bring out the worst in people, because they go into like the most egoic, stance on it, like,
Yeah.
and they lose sight of the altruism. Like, well, what are we doing this for? Are
Yeah.
we doing this to really improve humanity or help someone physically? Or are we doing it to, like, play God and take over the world?
Yeah. People have been like hoping that the United States government has UFOs for decades. I'm telling people, no, no, no. We do not want the United States government to have those. Otherwise, we're going to start going democracy building on other planets. Like, this is scary. We don't want these guys to have that stuff.
Exactly. I don't think we've done such a great job on this
Yeah,
planet.
we don't need to go spreading democracy onto other
Yeah,
planets yet.
exactly.
I think we can stay here.
Right. Why don't we destroy this planet and then,
Yeah.
peace out of this planet and go to another planet and populate and, God knows do what on that planet. I think we have a lot of things to improve on this planet.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these guys are out out ahead of their skis a little bit. Like Kurzweil, for instance. He thinks that they're going to be able to upload, like you said, into a computer. I have big problems with that. I have a lot of big problems with that. One of them being that, so like let's say the Star Trek, what are they called? Beam me up, Scotty. That thing, for an
Yeah,
example.
yeah, yeah.
Every time you step into the transporter, you disappear and another one of you reappears. So there's a break there. So is that you? Is that another person? I have a hard time believing that more than one of you can exist in the same place, even if it's uh, in succession of each other. Like I just haven't. I think people have souls. I think we are individuals, truly individuals, and I'm not convinced that whatever that thing is going to be you. And I'm not convinced that we're ever going to have the technology or even the know-how to pull something like that off. We don't even know what consciousness is, let alone how to pluck it out of somebody's mind.
Totally. You just, that is so right on what you said, because what I explored, Nick, in the whole transhumanist movement, because I was really like, okay, let me look at it from all angles, without rushing to judgment about what it is, and as a mindfulness practitioner myself, and someone who really likes to delve deep into the areas of consciousness, if you will, as abstract as that may be, to use the word consciousness when you're talking about transhumanism and define it as that it's not spiritual in nature at all. It's very unhuman, if you will. And I have a problem with that too, because if you're going to present this transhumanistic viewpoint on that we can transcend our biological form, and then we get tapped into a sort of consciousness that is more machine-like than the spirit of man, you lose me on that one. I'm like, really? Because I think of consciousness in a more of in a spiritual context, and I know the word spiritual can be loaded, and people can read different things into that, and I don't mean it at all religious. I mean that we're spirits that inhabit this vessel, which is the human body. And and once we leave this vessel, who knows where the spirit goes. There are many theories and beliefs as to where your spirit returns to, from where it came from, to where it goes. And from a transhumanist point of view, especially with Kurzweil's book, it just kind of does away with all of that. And it's like, who needs all that? That's messy. We get sick, we die. We don't want that. We want to be machine-like. We want to be spiritual computers. We want to be like, immortal. And that there's and to use consciousness in that context, to me, it holds no meaning ultimately, because Ray Kurzweil can have his own, he has every right to have his own opinion of what he thinks consciousness means. Consciousness to me is conscious awareness, meaning you're aware within the human vessel that you are in. The spirit that inhabits this body has an awareness of my existence, the existence of others, and the existence of the universe. So you want to transfer that to a machine? How do I know that's going to duplicate that?
Yeah.
I don't know. It
Yeah.
just, you lose me on that one.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think many of these people like Kurzweil who are just adamant atheists,
Totally, totally.
militant is a better word, militant atheists. I
Absolutely. And a
don't
lot
think that they even believe in consciousness. I think that they believe that we're just firing neurons, and if they can recreate every neuron down to the millimeter, that they're just going to appear.
I could so right on again. It's like if you think of that, they are very atheistic. You're absolutely right. And, everybody can do themselves about how they feel about the Godhead, whatever that means, whether you believe in a God presence, unity consciousness, the absolute, whatever you want to call it, or not. Clearly, I feel that the transhumanists, it's void of any God-like belief system. Okay. And so that to me, therein lies the rub, because what the way I view a lot of them is that they perform in a very God-like way. Well, let us be God, and we can create ourselves to be super beings as computers. Well, isn't that a God complex of sorts? So you deny the existence of a Godhead, but you yourself want to play God. That seems like a real contradiction to me.
Yeah, and Kurzweil in specific, like I've studied some Kurzweil too. I've got his book, and it's very wild, like you said. Uh, he has this daddy issue where he wants to bring his father back, and I have a hard time with that too. I think that's probably an excuse. I think he wants to live forever, and if he can convince people that he wants to speak to his father again, and that's why he's doing all of this, then now he's altruistic. He's a good person, and I can help you be good people too by allowing you to speak to your dead relatives. And meanwhile, I think these guys just want to live forever. And I think there's probably something extremely unhealthy about living past 105, 10 years.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that a lot of the guys that I was researching, I mean, I can't sort of Elon Musk sort of talks out of both sides of his mouth.
He does.
So
He's a
he's sort of
snake.
like, well, yeah, or the grand trickster.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so I think you're a transhumanist, but you want to have a bunch of kids, but then you want to chip one of your kids, and then he's constantly like, okay, I'm over here, but I'm really over here too. But Kurzweil and the transhumanists who I think really do well. You could say Zuckerberg, for
Yeah.
example, with somebody creating creating a alternate universe, the metaverse. And I feel that they especially when you get to be like a Zuckerberg. I'm not saying Kurzweil is a billionaire, but when you get into being these sort of global elites and you're the one percenters, what could be sexier than like, oh, we get to play God, and we get to
Yeah.
be immortal, and we get to tell people how to live and what they can and cannot do, and we get to be supercomputers, and or spiritual computers, whatever Kurzweil thinks it is.
Yeah.
And I just think of it as just a full-blown God complex.
Hmm. And
I really do.
and Zuck is a great example of again, like transhumanism in a lot of ways. If you look at a picture of him in college and a picture of him now, when he's in fight shape trying to fight in the Coliseum, it's a different person completely. I mean, he was a doughy nerd 20
Completely.
year ago, and now he's a chiseled,
Right.
decent
And
looking guy, at least, like at the
okay,
minimum.
yeah, okay, but those guys could be on the spectrum for all
Oh,
we
they
know.
all are, I
You know,
think.
you're talking about, the nerds that probably were bullied, and I don't know how many girls, which is fine. You could be a nerd one day and be a prince the next. That's not really what I'm saying. I'm just thinking there's something that they all share in common. There's like a thread there. And especially, like, okay, someone like, Zuckerberg, who I think I think its name is Jarvis,
Yeah.
this robot that he has, Jarvis, which he calls his, intellectual equal. Everything that he's putting out there is that this universe, we as human beings, is not enough. We got to create an alternate reality. We got to create the metaverse.
Yeah.
We got to do all these things that really are showing us that we're not enough. And so he's trying to embody that now himself, and I think there's something really off.
Yeah. And I think excuse me, Elon Musk, there's something dark going on with him right now too. You know, people are all fired up. Oh my God, he bought Twitter and he's letting people speak their minds and blah, blah, blah. But he's a very, very useful piece of controlled opposition. The government owns him. They can end his life with the stroke of a pen. And it's also a very useful thing to be like, hey, look at this billionaire who wants universal basic. He's a borderline socialist. He wants universal basic income and transhumanism, but now he's right wing. So now we can call him right
No,
wing.
no,
So he's right wing, and it's just
totally.
it's
He's
such
really,
a great role for him to play.
I mean, what's that? Wasn't he dressed up? I guess you could say the same thing about Klaus Schwab dressing up in
Hmm.
that what kind of a, outfit that is, like, a, short of looking like, Darth Vader.
Yeah,
It's like some kind of weird,
so creepy.
suggestive secret society. I don't know. I mean, hey, listen, if that's their fantasy of what they think the future is going to be, then let them have that. Let them go do that fantasy for themselves. But why are they trying to suck everybody else into that vortex?
Yeah. Did you look into Neuralink at all while you were doing your research?
Well, I know that, I mean, I know about Neuralink, and I know his whole, idea of chipping. And, that's going to probably appeal to the younger demographic because,
Mhm.
if you have some young kids that go, oh, how cool, I can go like this and open up my car, or, and it's already happening. You look at the data mining, and you look at going into like these markets where they're going to want your thumbprint or face recognition or it's already kind of, that train has left the
Yeah.
station, as we know. So, and I think we bought an inordinate amount of uh, microchips. I know there's something with our government that's involved with that. So microchip is probably the way of the future to these guys.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of DARPA employees working on Neuralink. I think that DARPA figured this thing out pretty recently after 2012, probably between 2015 and 2020. They probably figured this thing out and they said, we can't really just start putting it into soldiers. That's not going to look good. So we need to get it out into the market somehow. And here's our guy, Elon Musk. We can feed him all the information. We can give him the scientists, and all he has to do is sell the dang thing, which he's very, very good at.
Yeah, I mean, all we have to look is Tesla. Tesla, is reigns supreme with the electric cars. So I think with Neuralink, the microchipping it's real,
Yeah.
isn't it? There's certain countries that are already, I think, implementing it. It's just a matter of time, and at the rate that we're going, we're moving so fast
Yeah.
that it's literally probably already happening.
Yeah, and I worry about that thing. I know he's been murdering chimps to make the dang thing, but one thing that they don't talk about a lot is they kind of, like you said, they kind of just don't care about the body. There's, monism, dualism. They think the body is something that can just be tossed aside. I
Yeah,
do not.
yeah,
And
I don't care. I'm with you,
yeah,
Nick.
and
I feel that way.
I
Yeah.
think they're going to do things that are going to hurt people's bodies. Like, for instance, how many people you could poll 1 million people on, do cell phones give you cancer when you hold them up to your ear? And you're going to get a significant portion of the population that say yes. And there's a good reason for that. You shouldn't be putting heat next to your brain. We all know what happens when you get a couple degree fever. If it's not taken care of, you die. So now you're going to put this piece of electronics into your brain that's going to be radiating heat. So how do you get rid of the heat in something like this? Well, you have to make like cooling fins. So we're going to start seeing people with metal mohawks. Like the dinosaurs actually knew what was going on with this. They were able to cool. So we're going to start seeing metal mohawks, and it starts with the Neuralink, but I think the only way that these people are actually going to be able to upload is if they replace every piece of their brain little by little and get used to it and get used to it. And then right before they die or right after they die, they'll add that last little piece. And we're going to get it's going to be some weird stuff.
We're seeing a lot of weird stuff. We're seeing a lot of weird stuff, and we're going to keep seeing a lot of weird stuff. That's why I wrote my book Time to Wake, and it was like, wake up, people. and see what's going on. So you don't wake up one day and go, what the hell happened? The world changed and it looks unrecognizable.
Yeah.
So, and we're showing it. They're showing it to us every single day. We're seeing some new change that's happening. And people are, I say in Time to Awaken, you have people that are asleep and people that are awake. People that are asleep have no clue what's going on. They're in a semi-conscious state, which is a state you're in literally when you're sleeping. And then you have those of us that know exactly what's going on and we're awake to it. And we're seeing how this mad science is trying to take over the globe.
Yeah. Now, so here's one that I'm torn on. Another one I'm torn on is life extension. I know we talked a little bit a minute ago, but part of me would love to live forever. I'd love to just see what happens. I want to see what happens. Like that, to me, that's kind of the big draw to living longer is like, yeah, connections and stuff like that. But if I had to give like one reason why I would want to live longer, is I want to see what happens. I want to see if we go out into space. I want to see if we meet other people out there. I'd like to see what happens. But then again, I'm also torn about people living longer than they should. And, if the human brain could handle 1,000 years of memory, that might be great, but I don't think it can. I think you're going to have to, if you want to live past those years, you're going to have to like supplement with electronics essentially. So do you think it's possible for people to live 200 or 300 years without turning into monsters, or are we just done?
I really think that there's the longevity in living forever or being immortal. I think that there's something soul selling about that, and that it's having this idealism, this fantasy, this future fantasy that we're going to be able to, again, to transcend our biology. Well, the only way for that to happen is to become machine-like. So it's a trade-off. It's like you can't be human and be in this body that ages and gets sick. That's just a given. So what do? I think to a lot of these transhumanists, it's that you become like a machine.
Yeah.
And if you, whether you subscribe to Darwinism or not, if you think we really have evolved from apes and then we start to change as humans and that we'll keep changing, maybe there's a human element to that, but I don't see it right now because I see that it's a trade-off, and it's a very soul-selling trade-off, to trade off your physical self to become a machine. And that's maybe the way we can live into who knows when.
That's interesting. That's like something I think about a lot. Like, what would evolution do to us if we just stood back and let it happen? And I thought about that with my hand when I got the prosthetic. And I've thought a lot about prosthetics. Like, how could you make it better? And one of the things I thought about was like, okay, what would my hand look like 1,000,000 years from now? And I thought, maybe this pinky would kind of fold down and kind of turn into a second thumb. And I thought, well, why aren't these prosthetics making second thumbs? Like, we could get, creative with these things and try to figure something out. But unfortunately, like in the world of prosthetics, the colleges are the only ones who innovate. Once you get out to the private market, like I asked my prosthetics guy, hey, what do you think if we did this type of design or this type, like for my motorcycle, what if we did this or this or that? And he goes, yeah, I don't know. I've never tried anything like that before. I go, you've never tried it? He goes, no. I go, well, why not? He goes, well, we're too busy, man. We got to build, we got to sell. We don't have time to innovate. We lean on the colleges for that.
Well, and I also think that so much of what they're learning in the area of medicine, like things like stem cell or PRP, and the way we can grow our own cellular, biology, if you will. Why aren't we focusing on that as much more, I would say, more than focusing on trying to be a supercomputer? Because if we can grow from our own cells, limbs, that to me seems more human-like,
right,
than just rushing to become a robot or a supercomputer. Do like that makes human sense to me. Like if somebody said to you, hey, Nick, we can literally grow another hand. We can grow. I mean, you would probably, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but wouldn't that be something that you would say, oh, okay, rather than to go into immediate human to machine? Why does it have to be bionic? Why, if we're making all this headway in the area of stem cell research, well, we really could grow. If they're growing, have you seen where they actually, I just saw this recently where like they're using they can actually it looks like a copy machine and turn it into steak.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Into,
it's a tumor. It's a
it's
tumor.
like, it's like a copy machine. It's a certain kind of machine.
Yeah,
Next, you're literally eating, whether it's lab grown chicken, which is the new thing, like, oh,
yeah.
let's make lab grown chicken. Let's make something in a petri dish. And I'm like, okay, so you want to grow fake meat. Well, maybe you should focus on growing extended limbs.
Yeah. Yeah, and as far as I know, the only part of the body that can survive outside of the body is a tumor. So I say we're eating tumors. But actually, it's funny you mentioned that. When I went to Mayo Clinic originally, I didn't even know anything about the Mayo Clinic. I just looked up like, give me a list of the top 10 hand surgeons in the world. And the first one in America was like number 5 or something like that, and it was at the Mayo Clinic. So perfect. I called this guy up. And I go on his website and he does transplants. So I go right away, I go, give me a transplant. I want a transplant. And he goes, nah, we can't do a transplant on you. I go, why not? Like, it seems like it's so much better. And he goes, you're too young. You're too healthy. You can't do it. He goes, essentially, I do them for practice. So as soon as you get a transplant, you have to start taking AIDS medication, essentially. So it just destroys your immune system because you're, trying to get rid of this hand that's on you. But essentially, he did take my DNA, and he says that he is able to grow every part of a human hand in his lab in separate dishes. It's just getting able to put it to put it all together. And what they really need is a scaffolding, like some sort of base. And they're working with like this collagen material that bone should be able to eat. So you'll kind of build this base that's modeled off of your hand, and you'll inject tissue and it'll just start eating this thing away and just start growing on top of it. And then he'll be able to just transplant it right back on there, just like he's doing right now for practice. That's why he's practicing. So when he actually can grow it, he'll be able to put them on. I thought that was fascinating.
That is fascinating, and that makes more sense to me. But I think when you have these futurists that are so enamored with and very turned off to the human body,
Yes, like you
and
said,
and
they
that,
would
like,
much rather go to something like this.
totally,
It's
why bother?
it's just easier. Throw that thing in the garbage.
Absolutely, it's so discardable. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? So
yeah.
good luck to anybody who's saying no. Actually, maybe that's a pretty good idea. Maybe put some research into that, serious research into that. They're like, oh, that's yesterday's news.
Hmm. So, and you said something earlier that kind of piqued my spider sense there. You said it makes human sense. One thing that's never made sense to me is there's this theory in like conspiracy theory. I guess every stoner's probably had this theory before. Hey, man, you think the gray aliens are us from the future? And I always thought that was the dumbest theory because it doesn't make sense in human terms. Like, we still, as much as the news and the magazines want to tell us different, women like a tall, in shape man, and men usually attract to women that are fairly tall and in decent shape. I think that in the future, distant future especially, we're going to be giants compared to we are now. We're going to be 7 feet tall. I know Joe Rogan has the gray alien theory, and it's like, man, how do these smart people think that we're going to? And I guess, all right, this should bring us into the next part of the conversation that I wanted to ask you about. When you look at this trans movement, trans children, do you see a transhuman movement? Because I certainly do. Let's get rid of what a man is or a woman is or what a person is, what a body is. Let's just erase it all.
I think the transgender movement is the prelude to transhumanism, for sure. I feel that way. And it's already preparing that we're non-binary, that we're going to transcend gender identity, and that then it's this gender fluidity, and that we're neither male nor female. We're going to transcend our biology, which doesn't connote male or female anyway, and we're going to be more machine-like. Well, machines don't have genders. So yeah, I do think it's definitely transcending the whole gender identity, which to me is very much in step with the whole transhumanist movement.
Now, do you think that's a deliberate thing? Like, are the Ray Kurzweils of the world saying, let's break them in through this kind of stuff? Or is it just kind of a
I don't
convergence of two different fields at the
think
wrong time?
Yeah, I think it's a confluence of events that seem to be very interestingly happening coincidentally at the same time. Gee, I wonder
Yeah,
why. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know Ray Kurzweil personally, and if he's in favor of the transgender ideology, but
I'm sure he
it's
is.
but it seems to me that this is just completely in step with the transhumanist agenda. You
Yeah,
know,
this trans stuff comes straight from the universities, which is they're all teaching the same thing. There is no objective reality. There is no truth. You can be whatever you want. If you believe it, then it's up to somebody else to bow down and make you feel better about yourself. Like it seems to me that there
but
has to be a link between transhumanism and postmodernism somewhere. I haven't been able to find it yet.
yeah, first of all, again, in that God complex context, when I think of, okay, you go into this sort of like, if we even entertain the idea of a transhumanist agenda and you take the transgender ideology, well, here's where you cannot transcend the human needs, basically. And that is the transgender movement is going to be dependent on big pharma. You can't suddenly go like, oh, hey, I identify as a different gender and I can do this all by just blowing up
Hmm.
my mind and getting, other consciousness that inhabits my body and tells me that I'm the gender, whatever gender I want to be. No, you're going to be dependent on big pharma for the rest of your life. So guess what? You're stuck in your human body. Okay. It's like this, again, it's this God complex of, if that's the precursor to transhumanism, but these poor souls who go down that path, and it's tragic to see the metamorphosis that they go through and all sorts of illnesses, the mutilation of the body, and the dependency of big pharma for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I
Do you
mean,
know?
I am so pharma dependent. It's crazy. Like I'm at the point now where I have had to get creative. I take a lot of medications. Like I'm in pain. I can't sleep. It's just a nightmare. Anyways, not complaining. Just to say that I take a lot of medications. And if there's like a mess up between my doctor and the pharmacy, I'm screwed if I'm not set. Like I've had to get creative and like take less for a couple months to have a stash of medications because if something, God forbid, something happens to the world and I can't get to a pharmacy, I am
Well,
screwed.
guess what, Nick? You just hit upon something that I think is starting to show up because I know somebody that's scheduled to have surgery, and she just posted something today that she was trying to fill a prescription for a medication that they weren't able to fill for her. So, when you start to hear like, oh, that medication isn't available, or this procedure isn't available that could maybe help save your life or help prepare you for surgery or help you post-op, whatever, you're smart to think that way
Yeah.
because, and I mean, I don't know what medications you're on, but today 1 in 4 people is on an antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication that, everybody's stressed to the max,
Yeah. Yeah.
they can't sleep, this is epidemic.
Yeah.
So people are very, very pharmacy dependent.
Yeah. It's debilitating. Like not being able to sleep is rough. I
I know.
have a hard time sleeping and it's rough. Like I don't blame people for having to go to something, but gosh, I wish that more healthy people would take these things more seriously. It's so dangerous. Like, I've been dealing with no sleep for a long time and I've been asking my doctors and they just want to throw medication at it, which at
Is
this
that
point like I don't really have a choice to do.
is
And
that after your hand
yes.
situation?
Yeah. Yeah. I end up like I'll wake up early in the morning. I have what's called CRPS, chronic regional pain syndrome. So most people they'll get phantom pain from now and then. Most people that I've talked to when I ask them, "Do you get phantom pain?" They go, "Yeah, every once in a while I get an itch or this and that. Like I am all the time 100% pain. Like but I'm one of the few people who got a amputation a year after my injury. They thought maybe we can save the hand, so we'll leave it on for a year. So what happens when they take the hand reverts to the position that it was in when they take it. So I had
Oh,
already been destroyed by a plastic surgeon. So my hand was a claw like this.
mm,
So instead of my hand feeling like this and being able to move or anything like that, I have a claw that's just stuck all the
mhm,
time. And when you
mhm.
wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and your sleeping pills have worn off, there ain't no going back to sleep. You're up.
Yeah. No, that's tough. That is absolutely tough. And you're right. And, I mean, but the thing about that, Nick, is that now I'm hearing more and more people are saying they're not being able to fill these
Yeah.
prescriptions.
Oh,
You're
that's
right.
where I was going with this opioids. Like we are in such a backlash from the opioid epidemic that the people who are being punished for this are not the cartels. They're not the people, shipping drugs into this country. We're not doing anything to them. They operate with impunity. The people who are getting punished for this are people like me and you. My mother went and had bunion surgery last week. It was just a gnarly surgery. I didn't think that stuff was that gnarly, but it was a gnarly surgery. Her foot got jacked up. Her doctor gave her 4 pain pills. 4. She called to
I'm
get more. The office wouldn't even call her back. I know I get a lot of crap about pain meds. It's been a battle because I was a drug addict before I got hurt. But to be honest, I've talked to so many people at this point that I think they're doing this to everybody. I think that they're so worried about insurance and getting busted for prescribing somebody too many. If I sent you pills and they found out about it, that doctor's office is getting destroyed.
Yeah.
So the backlash has been against people like me. It
Yeah.
sucks.
No, at least you're so onto it and you're so aware of it. You're super aware of it. And I think that's important because, you do have to think about what if they start to mess with the supply and the demand of
Yeah.
something, and then there's something that people really need, and then suddenly they can't get it.
Yeah.
So you've created the dependency, and now you're not filling the dependency in people.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And it's
If
like a bad
China
it's
if
like a bad it's a bad joke.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if China decided tomorrow that they didn't want us to have medications anymore, we'd be pretty screwed. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
it's
It
pretty wild. Like as a drug addict, like I'm not under no illusion that I'm not a drug addict. Like I'm a drug addict. I get my drugs from a doctor, but I'm like if I didn't take my meds today, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'd be sweating in my bed somewhere, in all kinds of pain. But it's and
No,
now
I
I forgot where I was
you're
going.
but you're aware of it.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
aware of it. I mean, I think being aware of it in a way, it's like you could have the ability to alchemize it.
yeah,
I mean, it's a road to take to say you're aware of the need of that, but you also have the ability to maybe alchemize it. But that's a commitment. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's just
yeah,
say worst case scenario, you couldn't get your drugs. Let's just say worst case scenario. You could either ride it out and die 100 times and get rebirthed, meaning not physically
yeah,
die, but it would probably be extremely torturous to go through withdrawal of these meds. But you might be able to transcend that too. I mean,
Oh yeah, no, I've come off of meds before. I'm on such a little amount today that I'd be fine. It'd take me a couple days, but I'd feel like crap for a couple days. But nothing like when I was an actual drug addict sitting in a jail cell
right,
screaming at them to give me anything. Like
right.
I've been there, and that's torture. But
Yeah. You obviously moved past that. But
yeah,
I do wonder because I'm hearing these stories of people saying, oh, couldn't get their meds filled. Well, what's going on with that? You have to kind of put that on the back burner
you
in your
do.
mind.
You do.
You
Oh,
really do.
for me, it's something I'm always aware of. I'm always aware. I have to be aware of what's going on. I missed a doctor's appointment a couple months ago by accident, and oh boy, that was almost a freaking disaster. But yeah, you just got, like you said, you got to be aware about it, understand the world around you, know that the people in charge are not out for your best interest. They do not care. if you get your
No,
medications or not. They only
no,
care that big pharma gets their money for the medications. That's
seems
what matters.
sure seems that way. Yeah.
All right, so here's another one I wanted to bring up for you. What do you think about CRISPR? This is another one I'm kind of torn on. Like, you would want your children to have the best opportunities physically and mentally. So I have a hard time thinking that parents aren't going to use this if there's not some sort of law in place. And even if, say, the United States put some sort of law in place, you can go right to China.
Yeah, I'm not as versed in CRISPR, but I just
Mm.
saw something on it recently, and I don't know really what it does to
Designer
kids.
babies. It's a
Right.
designer
Oh,
baby, essentially. So you can,
yes. Okay. Didn't.
yeah,
I think it's called something else, but if CRISPR is sort of the other
it's how
name
you
for.
edit the genome before
Yeah.
in
So
something.
there's already birthing centers that are going to be set up so that, well, first of all, you've got the whole notion of pregnancy with surrogacy. You've got in vitro, you've got, we look at where we are till right now and what has been utilized, and that if we're going to be making babies in petri dishes eventually, and that you can pick and choose whatever you want that baby to be and whatever the genome is all about. Well, again, this is something that's coming up, and it's something that is, I mean, I'm sure there are countries that are, I think I heard something about Dubai with birthing centers where women aren't going to even need to hold a baby in the womb anymore to give birth in a womb. You're going to have pods for that.
Which is terrifying.
So, well, yeah, I mean, this is all these future imaginings that I think are very real. And it's just a matter of, if it's going to coexist on the planet with us, then let's at least not force people to have to live that reality if they don't want to. I mean, are we going to live in some kind of like, post-apocalyptic world where there are going to be those of us that succumb to these, futuristic, dystopian ideas of what life should be, and people that just said, no, not for me. I don't want to go that route. And we're
Yeah.
going to just live side by side.
Yeah. And so how are we going to navigate this stuff? Like, if people think that politics is tense right now, just imagine when, like, instead of saying I'm going to get the next, black woman, they're going to go, well, who cares if John Fetterman's had half of his brain replaced?
The way things are looking right now, I mean, there are times where it is so surreal and it's horrific. It's very dystopian. It's very Orwellian. It's very Huxley-esque. It's all of the above. But wow, has the world changed radically in the last 3 years. And like I said, it is speeding up as we're talking. So we're either gonna, I mean, and I'm an optimist, I'm not a pessimist. I'd like to think that we're going to be able to save our civilization. I hope and pray.
Me too.
I really do. But wow, things have been really crazy lately.
Yeah. I have a feeling that maybe even in my lifetime that you're going to see something like San Francisco putting a gate on the Golden Gate Bridge and saying, you're not coming in here unless you've got your vaccines and your brain chip, because we need to know if you're thinking like a terrorist.
Exactly. I mean, we are really living in those times where, there's talks about smart cities. There are all these theories about what just happened in Lahaina. Weigh in however you want, but people are talking about it. The good news is it's coming up in conversation, and people better wake the what up to realize that, hey, this is what's coming down the pike. So you better be awake enough to be able to fight it, resist it, realize it, and decide how you want to live. And if you're somebody who doesn't want to be, a guinea pig without informed consent to get vaxxed with something you don't even know what you're putting in your body, some RNA and DNA genetic sequencing shots, whatever. If that's going to be mandated, what are you going to do the second time around? We just went through that. We just went through that. Okay.
Yeah, I lived in Lahaina for a year. My aunt and uncle just lost their home and some friends. It's a terrible thing. But the point I'd like to make about it right now is that if you're not aware of the world around you, someone like me or you think that Lahaina was just destroyed by climate change. Or even, and this is on the same vein, or you think it was destroyed by space weapons. To me, both of those things are ways to obfuscate blame for the people in charge who made the worst mistakes. That fire was caused by power lines. That's
Right.
and it's
Right.
maybe not as fun as space weapons, but we need to hold the people who are responsible to this feet to the fire. We can't just go, oh, it was the space weapon. That's what they want you to say. Oh, it was climate change. So they don't have to face the consequences for screwing up royally and causing the biggest natural disaster in this country in over 100 years.
Absolutely. And a great opportunity for land grabbing.
Yes.
I mean, like,
Yes.
okay, now phase 2 of that is going to be complete land grabbing.
They're already starting. The people are already, they
Talking
just
all
did
these
a
people.
rezoning in the area. And it said, well, the only way your insurance won't pay out is through a natural. So people aren't getting paid out already. They're calling up and saying, sorry, rezoning, you're not getting paid. And then an hour later, they get a call from a developer with an offer. And these
Yeah,
people, this Lahaina is an old town. These people have owned these homes for generations. They
I
don't
know.
have anywhere to go. They don't
It's
have
tragic.
money saved up to rebuild. They're not going to get paid out nearly what the property is worth, and they're going to have to go. And it's horrible. It
It's
breaks my
horrible.
heart.
And how about this whole thing about what is our government saying? We're going to give them $700 a person, something crazy, but we can give billions of dollars to Ukraine. I mean, come on, people. What are we talking about here?
Disgusting.
It's beyond disgusting that you treat these people like they're animals. It's unconscionable that this is going on in our own country. Okay, even though Hawaii is its own separate.
I'm on record saying I think this is a great opportunity for us to give them Ukraine money and say it's yours. It'll never happen. But that is what we should do if we really lived in this liberal, we've got the greatest liberal president of all time. Like, why don't you guys do something liberal? Apologize for stealing their island and give it back.
Expressing this tragedy. It's not even being talked about.
I'm looking at reports. Deaths are still at 6. I know multiple people have been missing for 8 hours at this point, still at 6. And I'm getting constant articles. Climate change, Maui, climate change. These people have no shame. As soon as they possibly could, they were right on climate change.
Yeah, I mean, and then encouraging tourism. I saw one woman who spoke so eloquently, and she's like, don't come to Maui. Don't swim in these waters where there's still dead bodies in there and do your scuba diving. I mean, it's beyond disgusting. It's inhumane. I got to tell you, we can talk about transhumanism and transcending our humanness. And then you look at the way we behave to one another. It's so animal. It's worse than the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
It's unconscionable.
And talk about inhumane. I was homeless on that island for quite a while, and they ship all over the country, and cities have been busted. I think New York was busted doing this. They ship their homeless out to Maui because they can live there comfortably. There are so many homeless people in that area who have nobody, no family, no friends. Nobody is looking for them. They are going to be wiped from existence.
I know, but you know what, Nick, I hope that enough people band together and that they rise up in such a way that something about the human spirit, that they know that they have been so lied to, so screwed over, that if this doesn't bring out something, if they create this collective within their own communities and they band together to create some kind of an uprising,
we have to. Obama, who is from Hawaii, put out one tweet in 7 days, and it was asking us to give money.
Where are all the celebrities? I mean, like, hi, Sean Penn, you went to Ukraine. I mean, where are the celebrities? Not to single just him out by himself, but like, where are the celebrities? Where are people who are posting things and coming to their aid and standing up for them? I mean, I did see Tulsi Gabbard going there, and that was great. She's from Hawaii. It's
Yeah.
like, where is everybody?
Yeah.
It,
I
it's
couldn't believe
unbelievable.
that. That was I was kind of doing research and I went, you know what? Let's just see if he even couldn't even be bothered to make a video in a week. And then as soon as Trump made his video, then they all started coming, uh-oh, now we got to play politics again.
Right. It's
And
the
it was
politics.
just disgusting because you can see the timestamps. It's like, here's Trump's, then here's Obama. It was just, and the fact
Yeah.
that like, even in his tweet, it couldn't have said like, hey, me and Michelle are going to donate $1 million right now. Try and let's see if we can match it in
Hello?
1
Hello?
hour.
What about Oprah?
Yes.
Oprah.
Yeah, I'll do a donation when everything's calmed down. It's like, oh, when everybody else is figured out and the spotlight's not on you anymore, then you're going to make a donation. And is it going to be like what was that woman's name? Johnny Depp trial. She goes, I pledged the money. They go, did you pay the money? I pledged it. She never paid the money. She pledged to pay the money. So let's see if any of this money actually makes it to the people who need it. These NGOs are frothing at the mouth right now.
No, I know. If you think of really what it would take to rebuild Lahaina,
You can't.
in a way that if people could really, people certainly had the means to do that, these billionaires that are not going to do anything. And what's going to happen is you're going to get these land developers that are going to come in and they're going to rebuild
You're going to turn it
Lahaina.
into Disneyland.
Yeah, and it's going to be unrecognizable. And
That was the last of old Hawaii, essentially.
I was there. I've been there, and it's beautiful. I went there for the first time when I was 13 years old. It was the first like adult trip that I took, without my family, and I fell in love with Lahaina. It was magical to me.
Yeah, it's hard not to. It's just an incredible place, and they're gonna destroy it. It can't be rebuilt. Some of the things. I mean, there was an old prison there that for pirates. You can't rebuild that.
You can't build the history. You can't. It's become. It's all ashes. There's no history there anymore. It's gone. It's very, very sad. If this doesn't, if these things don't wake people up to what's really going on, it's this is our future, people. Like, what's it going to take to wake us up? What's it going to take for us to say enough already? We've had enough. Do you know?
I don't, because you would think I would have never thought in a million years that people would have taken COVID the way we did. I thought it made me sad to see the way that people reacted to this, just in pure fear. I lived in San Francisco for 5 years, and the people who I knew in San Francisco just, 10 years ago, completely different people, scolding me for not wanting to wear a mask in Idaho, thousands of miles away from where they live, a place where they have never been before, who they do not understand whatsoever. Oh, well, you live in the cow pastures and you don't have a lot of people around. It's like, dude, there's 1 million people in this valley. I sit in traffic every day, just like I did in San Francisco, and they just don't care. Just do it and shut up. I didn't realize you were this difficult when we were friends. It's like, I didn't change. I'm the same person. We didn't talk about this shit back then. Back then, when I lived in San Francisco, Occupy Wall Street was going on, and we called it as it is. It was a bunch of hippies on the sidewalk taking advantage of a situation. That's how everybody in the city thought of it, and that was the right way to think about it. But now, I'm the evil one.
Right. I know. It's completely this inverted gaslit reality. It's just gotten pretty crazy. Pretty crazy.
All righty. Well, Ora, it was a pleasure having you on. We're about done here. Let's get you out of here. Thanks again for coming on. Tell everybody where they can buy your book.
Thanks for having me, Nick. They can go to Amazon.
Beautiful.
Amazon to be able to get everything and anything you possibly want. You can certainly get my book on there too. Time to Awaken, Changing the World with Conscious Awareness. And you can go to my website, oranadrich.com.
Sounds good. Thank you again for coming on. Good night, everybody.
Full of the Hennessy. 18 making raps till I'm 80 and too hard.